You're listening to The Rawha, Daily Guidance for Seekers with Shaykh Faraz Rabbani.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم لك الحمد على ما أنعمت علينا من نعم لا تحصى يا رب العالمين، فاجعلنا اللهم من عبادك الشاكرين الذاكرين لنعمك يا أكرم الأكرمين. We're continuing to look at the blameworthy traits of the self and their treatment, and we've reached the 33rd of the blameworthy traits. Imam Abu Abdulrahman al-Sulami rahimahullah ta'ala says, وَمِنْ عُيُوبِهَا سُرُورُهَا وَفَرَحُهَا وَطَلَبُهَا الرَّاحَةِ وَذَلِكَ مِنْ نَتَائِجِ الْغَفْلَةِ. From its blameworthy traits are its happiness and its rejoicing and its seeking comfort, and that is from the fruits or the consequences of heedlessness. So here its happiness, right? There's different types of happiness, right? And all of the human emotions can arise as a result of the different inclinations of the human self. Right? You can have a happiness that is there's a happiness that is of your lower desires. You are happy when you eat. You're happy when you fulfill some other physical desire. Your happiness can be whimsical. I'm happy when I clap, right? I'm happy when I jump up and down, right? Or whatever other, and many of our types of happiness are no less capricious than clapping or jumping up and down, right? That's whimsical happiness. But there's a happiness that is an intellectual happiness or a rational happiness. You're happy at good things, at beneficial things, right? You made a choice and it has advantage, and as a result, you are happy. You solved the problem, you are happy. But there's a reason for your happiness, and that's the happiness of the mind, and that's a higher happiness than the happiness of desire or whim. But then there's the happiness of the heart, which is one is pleased when something is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? من سرته حسناته وساءته سيئاته فذاك هو المؤمن, said the Prophet ﷺ. Whoever is pleased or is happy with their good deeds, they're not satisfied with them, but they're happy. It makes them happy out of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their good deeds. And saddened by their bad deeds, that is a believer. Right? Because it's one of the fruits of loving for Allah and hating for Allah. But here, there is a happiness and rejoicing of the nafs. That what makes you happy? Your desires and whims. What makes you sad, conversely? Your desires and whims. That is foolishness and pure harm. And likewise, seeking rest. You can have this whimsical rest, right? Right? I don't want to do anything. Why? Just because. That's hawa. Right? Procrastination. Right? Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do? Well, that's whim. Putting things off because of being busy by one's desires, that's nafs. Or other ulterior motives. Right? I'm going to show them. Right? And then there is a seeking rest that is rational. That that there's a time for this and a time for that, right? Just as you have worldly responsibilities that you give their due, you have religious responsibilities that you give them their due. There's huququl ibad, there's the rights of servants, the first of whom is yourself, your family, and others. So you give them their rights, so you work at fulfilling those rights. And there are rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you fulfill those rights. And then part of the rights of your own self is to have rest. And that chosen rest, that considered rest, is a rational rest. And that's praiseworthy. And there's a spiritual rest. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Truly in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. And that is a blessed rest. That is a rest beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the rest that is mentioned here, it's seeking rest, is whimsical rest. Right? The resting of the ego. Right? I don't feel like it. It's procrastination, which is manifest in tasweef, in putting things off. That rest is a result of ghafla, of heedlessness from Allah. And what is the consequence of heedlessness from Allah? Lack of three things, right? Lack of sense of your responsibility, of muhimma. What am I responsible for? In religious terms, in worldly terms, in social terms. What am I responsible for? What is my responsibility before Allah? And your hem, where do you direct your concern? Because your responsibility defines your concern. Your sense of muhimma defines your concern, your hem. And if you know that this is what I need to do, then that's translated in having himma, having resolve. Remembrance of Allah, consciousness of Allah drives this sense of purpose. Whereas being heedless of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drives the opposite, drives laziness, procrastination, seeking meaningless comfort. Or not even comfort, because there's one explicit heedlessness from purpose. But there's also an implicit heedlessness of purpose where you know what you have to do, but you just don't do it. You have things due, you don't do it. Why? Well, ta'adhur, right? Anyone just makes excuses, and that, is from clear lack of purpose. Because as the ulama say, beware of limiting Allah to your prayer carpet or your prayer beads. Right? That consciousness of Allah is fueled by prayer, fueled by remembrance. But consciousness of Allah is manifest in the choices you make. And those choices have to be driven by purpose. Mudawatuha, and its cure, التيقظ لما بين يديها, is to be awake, to have wakefulness with respect to what is before it. وعلمه بتقصيره فيما أمر به, and one's knowledge of having shortcomings in what one was commanded. And one's knowledge of having shortcomings in what one was commanded. Right? With respect to the rights of Allah, and with the respect of the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. And because that is, a servant is one who is governed by responsibility. Right? وَارْتِكَابِهِ مَنْ نُهِيَ عَنْهُ, and this is because of its falling into that which it was prohibited. Right? So being awake, what is in front of me? Right? What is in front of me? The believer is one who prioritizes. Right? احرص على ما ينفعك. Be avid for all that would benefit you. This would entail احرص على ما ينفعك. Be avid for all that would benefit you. It entails having conscious awareness. What am I responsible for? And then how do I fulfill what I am responsible for to the best of my ability? With hirs, with avid concern. Right? With avid concern. Right? Which is why, one of Imam al-Junayd gave various definitions for gratitude. One of them, he said, "Ash-shukru istifraghu at-taqa." Gratitude is to give one's utmost. Right? Right? That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. Few indeed of my servants are truly grateful. Right? Because most people do not have that consideration. Right? Be avid for what is before one. Right? And to know وَأَنَّ هَذِهِ الدَّارِ لَهُ سِجْنٌ, and to know that this world is a prison for one. وَلَا سُرُورَ لَهُ, and this prison has no pleasures. Right? Insofar as it's prison. Right? One has some comforts and so on, but that's not where the joy is sought. وَلَا رَاحَةَ فِي السِّجْنِ, and there's no rest in prison. فإن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الدنيا سجن المؤمن وجنة الكافر. This world is a prison for the believer and a paradise for the disbeliever. فيجب أن يكون عيشه فيها عيش المسجونين. It is proper that one's life in this world be the living of someone in prison. An intelligent prisoner would ready themselves for the day of their freedom. And when is the day of your freedom? The day you die. The day you die. You're just preparing for freedom. Right? لا عيش المستريحين, not the living of those resting. That's delusion. Like you're going to get out of prison. So establishing a big successful company in prison, like where you're not a lifer, right? Right? Someone established, I started a very successful business in the prison. Oh, but it's going to make money 10 years from now. But now you're out, right? And you can't go back. That's madness. But at least in this dunya, if you got out of prison, you could say maybe you could smuggle the money out, etc. But you can't smuggle dunya into akhirah. There's no route. وحكي عن سيدنا داود الطائي رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال قطع نياط قلوب العارفين ذكر أحد الخلودين. Right? The Dawood al-Ta'i, one of the great early imams of the spiritual path, he died in the year 162 after the Hijrah. So he's from the Salaf al-Salih. He said that all the aspirations and attitude of those who know Allah were chopped and humbled by remembering the two eternal abodes. فَرِيقٌ فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَفَرِيقٌ فِي السَّعِيدِ. One party in paradise and one party in hell. Right? وَقَالَ رَجُلٌ لِبِشْرٍ الْحَافِي. A man said to Bishr al-Hafi, مَا لِي أَرَاكَ مَهْمُومًا. Why is it that I see you full of concern? فَقَالَ رضي الله تعالى عنه لِأَنِّي مَطْلُوب. Because I am sought. Okay? I'm sought. I'm sought by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the sense of awe of the believer. Right? This is the sense of awe of the believer. And nothing nothing that will get one out of one's waywardness without an urgent self-reminder. Two of the great poets of Islamic history were good friends. Abu al-Atahiyya, who was a pious poet, he wrote, frankly, very depressing poetry on renunciation and abstinence and the terrible nature of this world. Beautiful poetry. Poetry for the penitent. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. His childhood friend was Abu Nawas. And Abu Nawas was a drunken poet. He was a corrupt man, not practicing. He celebrated wine and revelry and lechery and debauchery and every kind of sin, and was quite mocking of things religious and spiritual. He questioned virtue and celebrated vice. His friend was a sincere friend, Abu al-Atahiyya, so he kept reminding him. And one day Abu Nawas, the drunken poet, got fed up and he said, listen up. لا تخرج الأنفس عن غيها ما لم تجد لها من نفسها زاجر. Look, the self will never leave its wayward ways unless it finds for itself, from itself, an urgent warner, right? An urgent reminder, right? Unless it takes heed from itself, for itself. That heed could be the sense of fear and urgency on death. That warner could be gratitude. أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. That warner could be love. عَلَى مَا أَقُولُ بِأَنِّي مُحِبٌّ. On what basis can I say that I love? Right? There are many things. The quickest way is to nurture awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى. As for the one who's in awe of the station of their Lord and forbids them their self from its wayward ways. فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. For paradise for them is their resting place. So to have that sense of urgency that is delineated in Surah Al-Asr. So beware, like if you find laziness, procrastination, or also lack of prioritization. That is also a type of finding comfort, because many people find comfort in their routines. That's one of the types of talab al-raha. Is talab al-raha fil adat. One has some habits and this is the way I am. That's not the way you're called to be. Right? And that's why Imam Junaid was asked, what is spirituality? He said, أن تكون كما كنت قبل أن تكون. For you to be as you were before you became. Right? Which is intriguing, but that spirituality is to be your true Adamic potential, which is that honored servant of God, who knows God, who loves God, who is grateful to God, who embodies and upholds virtue, and not to be the sum of your sad habits. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى المغفرة. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He raise our resolves. The Prophet ﷺ has a beautiful dua that we'll close with. He said, Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla. There's nothing easy except what you make easy. وَأَنْتَ تَجْعَلُ الْحَزْنَ إِذَا مَا شِئْتَ سَهْلًا. And you make the difficult, if you wish, easy. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وحزبه والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you for listening to the Rawha, Daily Guidance for Seekers with Shaykh Faraz Rabbani. Help Seekers Hub give light to millions around the world by supporting us through monthly donations by going to seekershub.org/donate. Your donations are tax deductible in the US and Canada.